Okay. So one thing I want to make sure I bring up is, and I'll probably keep bringing this up throughout, talk about this. Let's see. Hey Mike, thanks for showing up. Hey Dynamesh 3D. About to get cracking. I want to make sure this link works real quick because today we have, yeah, if you go to ZBrushCentral.com or that link I just sent out, I want to remind you guys that today at noonish, around, well, noon Pacific time, so in a few hours, there's going to be that live streaming event. I'll probably just be bringing that up throughout. Go ahead and, okay. So this is going, this is working. Everybody hear me okay? No technical difficulties this morning. And right now I've got my sci-fi lady here. If we turn everything on, let's see what we got here. We got her, so we've got her helmet still left to do, which will be a fun one. And then we've got all of this kind of bulky stuff that goes into her mech suit, the interior of her mech suit going on. So we're getting pretty close to kind of just finishing out her base forms here. So we're kind of getting the last little bit. It's not finished. I mean, these things are pretty plain right now. It'd be a matter of going in and, you know, ZModeler and panel groupsing and loopsing and getting this stuff figured out. What I want to do here, you know, like a little lever here, these two little latches and a little lever that go ahead and, like, you know, pop these little things out, and integrating this little rubber seal around her back to kind of get that to fit. And then also finishing out this little spine reinforcement thing in her tech suit and how that integrates into this little butt plate there. And also the detail part, as far as, you know, this stuff's pretty plain. It's just ways to kind of break up her underlying tech suit and figuring out what kind of buttons and padding we would need to kind of sell that, and what kind of details we would need to sell that, and also finishing these boots out. So hey everybody, thanks for showing up. So we might do that today if nothing else comes up that piques my interest. Finishing some of these things out, probably the boots and the back are the last couple things we need to get done, and then, like I said, the spine thing. Right now I'm trying to figure out, you know, how this back kind of integrates. I've got this piece here, which isn't doing me a whole lot of good, I don't think. But it might be a nice placeholder. Let's see if I can do this. I'm going to go into solo mode here. And again, I'm just alt-clicking around to kind of select different things to work on, so I don't have to worry about where it lives over here necessarily. But if I go into solo mode here, I wonder if I turn off double. I don't know if close holes is going to work. Yeah, it's going to give me a really nasty mesh. What I'm going to do is actually just delete that. And let's go ahead and do a, you can go BI, brush insert, cube, and you know what, those kind of fit back in there. I feel like we need something in here. So what I'm going to do is duplicate this subtool off. I'm going to hold down Control Shift, do Control Shift A. Actually, you know what? We can just do this top piece here. We'll go ahead and delete hidden, Shift D to turn off dynamic, and I can steal some of this geometry to kind of pull up and around the bottom of here. So if I hold down Alt with my ZModeler brush, BZM, you can go ahead and grab that, and then I can hold down Alt and just kind of paint around in here. Kind of get those pieces of geometry that I like. Let's go ahead and take these, isolate this, Control Shift, click that, and then delete hidden. We can hit Control W, give that a new polygroup. Now I can do QMesh polygroup all and just kind of pull out some thickness here. And oh, this is just my custom menu here. So, you know, when I grab anything in here, I try and talk about it. But if you want to make your own custom menu and stuff. Hey, Grubber, thanks for showing up. Let me go ahead and get my links ready here while I'm still waking up. Let's see. So if you go here, if you go to the Intro to ZBrush Part 2 playlist, that'll walk you through the custom hotkeys and setting up your own custom menu and stuff. And of course, if you want to catch the last episodes we've done on this Pixelogic channel, you can go there. You can kind of go through and see the previous channels where we went through and we do quite a eclectic type and number of things on this channel. It's not really one or two things we go over. We go over quite a bit of stuff. So I just wanted to kind of put some extra stuff in here that can kind of bring these two objects together like that. And I suppose we can go over here. I'm going to go to my crease menu. If we go down here to geometry, crease, there's a crease tolerance. So this is like setting it by normal angle. So if I go into solo mode here, just by clicking the solo button, your solo button is probably actually down here somewhere. That's another thing you can do is you can rearrange buttons on your interface. If you go up here to preferences, config, enable customize, you can control alt drag stuff off, control alt drag stuff around, control alt drag stuff down here, and kind of set up your workspace however you'd like. And also with your custom menu, instead of going in here to the crease menu, I can just go into my custom menu, which is assigned to a hotkey, which a hotkey is you just hold on control alt and tap any menu item or any item in your ZBrush interface, and then it'll ask you to set a hotkey, and then my hotkey is set to alt A. And then I can just go through here and I can set my crease tolerance, hit crease, hit dynamic. Also crease PG is crease polygroup over there. And now this thing will be nice and creased like so. And that'll kind of provide that filler that these things can be attached to. And if I want to just kind of play around with the shape a little bit more instead of Z modeler, I can go in here, turn off project, probably turn off blur in my Dynamesh down here, and then set a resolution, hit Dynamesh, and now it's all Dynamesh. Of course, you're going to build in that faceting if you're not careful, so you're going to have to go to dynamic. So I've got dynamic sub Ds here, so I can do Shift D and D to get a dynamic preview. If I like what I see, I can hit apply, and now I can feel free to go ahead and Dynamesh this. And now I can just kind of play around with this. One thing to be aware of is you want to keep your brush size. If you've got clay buildup and stuff and you're using this to block this out, it's going to pull through on these thin meshes. If your brush size is thicker than the mesh thickness, then you Dynamesh, it's going to pull through and cause some of that problem. So make sure for each brush you go into auto masking and turn on backface masking. So it'll leave that backface alone. It's not global, so if you have your clear clay brush, that'll also do the same thing. So you need to go and turn backface masking off for that as well. I'm keeping an eyeball on the chat, but if I miss something, just keep hollering it out and I'll get back to it. And try and keep one eyeball open over here. Thanks for showing up, everybody. Hey, Pixelogic Thomas. I'm doing so far so good. Yeah, 12 o'clock Pacific time. Let me get that link handy. This is the ZBrush Central. If you go to the front page of ZBrush Central, you can see in the upper left-hand corner, I think there's the post, the event. Cool. Question. Hey Thomas, sorry to disturb you. I have an issue with the custom UI. I have it saved, but it won't display anything. One thing that'll happen, I don't know if this is your specific problem, but one thing to keep in mind is, so I've got my custom menu here, and I have Z spheres and nothing's showing up. In fact, if I go out of edit mode and I grab just a primitive, so here's a primitive cylinder, I can still go down here to like initialize and stuff. So if I want to, I can do like an inner radius and change the H divides and the V divides and stuff like this. And while this is in its initialized state, it's not real. It can't sculpt on it. If I try and sculpt, it's going to yell at me and say, I have to say, make polymesh 3D. Now you're going to see a lot of my stuff isn't showing up because there's not a whole lot of things I can do to a primitive. However, if I hit make polymesh 3D, all this stuff shows up. I still don't have any Z-sphere stuff, but if I switch and go grab a Z-sphere and drag that out, go into edit mode, now all my Z-sphere stuff is showing up, but then I'm missing a lot of polymodeling stuff because I can't do a lot of polymodeling operations on a Z-sphere. So it's context sensitive, so if you have some stuff, I'm not saying this is what your exact problem is, but just something to keep in mind. Go out of solo mode here. And now that I got this here, and now this is a Dynamesh, and again, I don't have to worry about like going in here. You can go into ZModeler and bevel this stuff out, but again, I'm not even sure what I want to have happen with this, so sometimes it's easier for me. That's another thing too, is when you're masking, that'll go through as well, so hold down Control, while I have mask pin selected, and then I can turn on backface masking for that. And now it'll just mask through here, so I can kind of mask. You can turn on transparency. If you want to sculpt through something, so if I go here with my brush, clay buildup will work okay. Standard brush doesn't seem to be working that well through this mesh. Make sure you turn on ghost, and now you'll be able to sculpt through the mesh there. And now I can just go through here and kind of mask this out, invert that mask, and then maybe use transpose, and you know, you can just tap to find that surface normal and kind of pull this out, and we can kind of pull this in as well. And again, I'm not doing anything super exact, obviously. I'm just kind of pushing some stuff around, dynameshing, smoothing. I'm going to go to smooth stronger, and now I can kind of use my standard brush. I'm going to crank up my Z intensity and turn off RGB. I'm not sure why that was on to begin with. And then my lazy radius. Might need to reset those brushes. Yeah, and if anything is weird going on with your brushes, you can sometimes just go to brush. Not that I'm saying anything's weird's going on, but there's some setting on my standard brush I don't remember setting. So I'm going to go over here to reset all brushes, and that'll just reset them all. So we know everything's on the up and up. I'm going to, again, up that Z intensity, turn off RGB, and now we can go through here and start chopping in here. Cut these around, go in here with trim dynamic maybe, kind of push these back here, get a drink. There we go. And then control drag. And then we'll smooth that out. Okay, so we've got that piece in there, and that's just kind of a cramped piece. And again, I can rebuild all this stuff. In fact, all of the sculpted stuff I usually do just end up rebuilding really quickly to get a nice clean mesh like these ones. For example, you'll see here's my rebuilt mesh that's kind of, it's got some polygroups and it's creased a little bit to get that shape. And it's not perfect. I can still go in and kind of keep rebuilding and refining this, or I can just dynamesh it and start cutting in details and adding alphas and stuff. But the original mesh here is this one. So when I do want to add detail, I can just throw this up here. I can do Shift S to save a screenshot, like so, and just kind of get a couple different views. You know, if I did want to use this as kind of like just, there's my concept sketch, let's say, and then when I want to go in and start adding details, I can just have this mesh showing. If I Alt tap it, there we go. And now, again, like I said, we can continue Z modelering this to get these details back. This little middle panel with the little flip up here, we can add back in. So, still just kind of blocking these things out. Here, if we want to not see that, we can Alt tap our concept there, and then under Subtool, I can tap the nameplate, which will turn the eyeball off, select anything else, and that'll just kind of get rid of that. Like so. I got a question, Seagull Crush, how would you go about creating a slice surface like this? Don't do it if it's a very big derailment. I don't think it'll be a big derailment. So just slicing through. So if I had, okay, so if I had like a, oh, I guess I could show you guys. It's a marzipan slice. Let me see, view image. There you go. So something like this, it would be, and when we start refining and slicing things, that'll be something I do as well, but we can go ahead and do that real quick. So perfect, we have a cylinder here with a hole in it. And this is the initialize primitive, so we can start with this. I think that'll be fine. So if we go over here to initialize, and we did our inner radius. So again, this is just a primitive, so we can make all sorts of changes. If we do like what we see, if we want to get rid of these V divides, we can either do it here and kind of get, you know, make it 3, and that'll just give you 0 in inner divides anyways. But if you do have some and you make Polymesh 3D, one thing you can do is go to Geometry, Edge Loop, and you can hit Delete Loops, and that'll get rid of what ZBrush considers extraneous based on the angle ratio here. If I drop that down, that'll do a slightly better job. I'm just trying to get rid of these ones there. There we go. So you can change that angle to kind of get what you want. Or, of course, you can go into Z Modeler here, Insert Single Edge Loop, and then if you hold down Alt, so you're going to see as I hover over an edge, it's going to be Insert Edge Loop. So now I can insert edge loops as much as I want. However, you're also going to see it says Alt is Delete Edge Loop and Shift is the constant width edge loop insertion. Oops, that's Insert Single Edge Loop. So you can go through here and just kind of manually get rid of what you don't want. So let's go ahead and do another delete loops here. And actually, let's go back to our cylinder 3D. We'll hit, again, just to make sure we're constant up here, let's go ahead and change this to like 12, or let's go to 24, and then v divides is 3, and then we'll go back to make polymesh 3D. And now we have this mesh, what we can do is we can go to polygroups and then group by normals, and that'll look at your normal angle threshold tolerance here. And depending on the angles between your meshes, we'll give a separate polygroup for here. So now I have an inner polygroup and then an outer polygroup here, which is sometimes useful if you want to go in here again, QMesh, polygroup all with your Z modeler brush, and that's just, again, B for the brush menu, Z for your Z starting brushes, and then M, you're going to see these little orange things in here. You can select your Z modeler brush. And now if I want to make this inner radius bigger, thicker or thinner, I can grab this QMesh polygroup all, or you can do polygroup island. And you can pull this in, you can hold down shift, and that'll just pull along that surface normal. So we can kind of build that inner surface and rearrange this outer surface here. And then we can hit X to go across X symmetry, which is just toggling it here in your transform menu. So we're X here, and if I turn on the floor, I want to make sure that we are Z forward, this little blue line. So usually working in ZBrush and keeping it compatible with all the menu items, I like to work Z forward. In fact, what I'm going to do is go ahead and lay this down. So I'm going to go, here's my Z forward. I'm going to take my transposed line, anchor it just by clicking on my surface and holding down shift and dragging straight out. So you can anchor at the bottom here, and now you can hold down shift and just rotate that around using WER, just goes through smooth scale and rotate with the transpose. And now I can also use move to scale this non-uniformly. So I can hit W. Again, I'm just going to anchor it from this midpoint here, hold down shift, shoot it straight up, and now I can just kind of pull this down. And now we got kind of that marzipan filling. Now, if I want to do the actual filling, what I can do is I can hold down Control Shift, and that'll give me the interior. Let's go ahead and do a duplicate, and then I'm going to go ahead and do a delete hidden. Now this delete hidden is under geometry, modify topology, delete hidden, and you're going to see it looks inverted. So if I want to cap this or give it thickness outward, I mean, I can still do that. I can go QMesh polygroup island and then pull out, but it's still inverted. So you're going to need to go down here to display properties, the bottom of your tool menu, hit flip, and that'll kind of go ahead and flip that around. But I don't really want to do that. I want to go ahead and hit flip here. Let's go into solo mode. There we go. So now I can hit flip, and I can hover over this edge now and do, let's go ahead and close convex hole. And now we can just kind of cap these. You can hold down Control Shift, hit Control W, and that'll go ahead and give you your own polygroups here. So now I've got this one here. We'll hit Control Shift, bring that all back. So now we've got this piece here, and then we've got this duplicated piece here. So if I go out of solo mode, turn off my floor, we've got a little slice thing. Now, this, I mean, you can, if these things were together, you could slice these things. So let's go ahead, let's do something a little bit different here. So I'm going to go hover over this edge here, and we're going to bevel, edge loop complete, and just kind of bevel this in. Now once we've done that, all we got to do is tap the other side to keep it consistent. We can all tap this subtool, and again, we just tap these edges to do this bevel operation that we've just done. And now if we hit D, we can get that dynamic preview here. So now it's kind of looks like it's sliced through. However, if you wanted to actually use the slice and you had multiple groups like this, what you can do, let's go ahead and do, well, first let's go ahead and inflate this middle one here. So I'm going to go to my deformation menu, which is down here, and you can do inflate, and let's inflate that along its surface normal there. And let's go ahead and under dynamic, let's go ahead and do smooth subdivisions. Let's crank that up maybe to 4, really smooth that out. And you can kind of see there's a little bit of faceting there. So if I do Shift D, that'll turn off dynamic, and I can kind of fix this. So I'm going to put an insert single edge loop, and we'll kind of just put that in there. See if that helps alleviate some of that faceting on the inner side there. This one looks fine. Let's go ahead and crank this one up. Now let's say we wanted to have this as one solid mass, Dynamesh mass. So one thing we can do is we want to go ahead and apply this. So under your dynamic, you're going to hit that apply button. We can alt tap this one. You can hit the applied, and that'll actually give you real subdivisions here. And now we can go ahead and we can turn off project, turn off blur, And we can do Dynamesh, so we can Dynamesh this middle piece here. Let's turn that resolution down. And again, your Dynamesh stuff's right down here. And then we can do the same thing for this one. Turn off project, turn off blur, and we'll Dynamesh this together. Now, here's the caveat. We have this thing as Dynamesh and this thing as Dynamesh as well. If we want to put both of these together, so if we merge these things down, and I have a hotkey for that, but for the merge menu, it's subtool merge down. We can merge it into one subtool here. We can control drag, and if we control drag again, it's going to merge these together, and now they're kind of stuck together. But if I want to keep these separate, but also Dynamesh, but also part of the same subtool, what you can do is you can hold down, I'm going to hold down Control Shift. You can either see how it's all split up into polygroups here. If you select one, it'll just select that polygroup. You can do Control Shift X to expand, and where that is under your visibility here. You can do grow and shrink, but you can also do grow all, Control Shift A. So you can do Control Shift A. I'm going to hit Control W, which is going to give this its own polygroup. That's under your polygroup menu. It actually has two functions. You can hold down Control and just kind of mask an area, and if there's something masked on your object, it'll group mask, clear mask. If there's nothing masked, it'll just group whatever is visible on your screen. So Control Shift to bring everything else back, Control Shift tap this one, Control Shift A, Control W, and now we have two separate polygroups. So now with that, if we go to Dynamesh here, if you turn groups on and you Dynamesh these, it'll Dynamesh them individually because they're their own separate polygroups here. So they're still Dynameshing and updating. So if I go through here and I start, going here and I kind of pull this out, we can go into our snake hook brush and we pull this out and we control drag. Again, it's going to Dynamesh this and it's going to Dynamesh this, but it's going to keep them separate. So now what you can do is you can go Control Shift, we can go slice, and you can slice through both of these here. Now that we've done this, we still have groups turned on. We can Control drag, and that will take this polygroup and this polygroup. And if we go do Control Shift A, it's sliced through it, and we also got a separate polygroup over here. It's kind of hard to see because it made it the same color. In fact, I'm going to turn off line so you can kind of see a little bit better. We can do Control Shift A, and there's that polygroup. Let's go ahead and hit Control W so it caps it at a different color. And then this one, Control Shift A, there we go. That's one that's capped a different color. Now, you need to be careful at this point because at this point, if you have groups turned on, it's going to Dynamesh this and also Dynamesh this polygroup by its own because, again, groups turned on, it's Dynameshing each individual polygroup. So it's going to cause, well, let's just do it. So if we do another Dynamesh with the groups turned on, it's going to have a little bit of a hard time. And then we do Control Shift A. Now this one, it had a hole, so it grouped that individually. And then if we Control Shift drag, we've got this piece here that's by itself. It just gets really messy in here. So instead of doing that, let's go ahead and drag our history slider back before that. Okay, so now again, Control Shift A. No, still not back far enough. There we go. So Control Shift A. It's two separate polygroups. Just hit Control W. That'll make it one polygroup. Same thing for this one. Control Shift A, Control W. And now that these are all, now we also got this interior one here. So Control Shift A, Control W, Control Shift A, Control W. Now, of course, you don't have to do this the manual way, which is what I did. I just wanted to illustrate that point. Another option you can do is just go to Polygroups, Auto Groups, and then anything that's not vert welded, it will go ahead and just polygroup by continuity, by surface continuity, which you can see here. So that way, it'll actually look at your topology and go, oh, this is cut, sliced through, and it's all one contiguous object, so I'm just going to polygroup all that together. Seems to be taking a little bit. It's not that, I guess it is pretty dense. It's 500,000 points. So once this is done figuring out what it's doing, I can go through and then open this thing up down the middle, and you'll see that basically we just sliced through it. We had two separate objects, and let's wait for that to respawn there. Thanks for showing up, everybody. Mike, what's your hotkeys for brushes? Oh, that reminds me. If you want my brushes, there's a couple different places to get them. Not to say that my, the startup or my custom menu is anything special. It's certainly not. In fact, it's a lot different than the one I have at work now. I need to update my home one. I'm kind of lost a little bit here. But in case you're interested, let me see. Let's do this one. On this Gumroad page here, if you scroll down to the very bottom, there's an intro to ZBrush files, and that has my custom menus and all that stuff, and I think even my hotkeys if you want those for some reason. And also I believe on my ZBrush page. And these are just freebies, so nothing special, it's just a couple different things, but just in case. But basically what my hotkeys are, they're all assigned to Alt because I always have my Alt key for navigation, so I can do like Alt Q for pinch, no wait, Alt Q for Z modeler, Alt Q was my old pinch, Alt Y for pinch, Alt A for my custom menu, Alt S for standard, Alt D for Damien standard, Alt H for H polish, Alt V for move acu, which we'll get to in a second. I'm not sure why it's having a hard time. So in this case, if it is having a hard time, what I would do is instead of doing auto groups, I would do it the manual way. Control Shift A, Control W. So Control Shift to select the polygroup, Control Shift A to grow visibility all, and then Control W to make it all one polygroup. And then you can skip, you know, auto groups having to figure out your surface continuity and get that to work. Because it looks like it's kind of dying here. So let's go ahead. I'm gonna end that there, and we'll go ahead and restart that real quick. Hey Yakub, thanks for showing up. Is your rig Ryzen or Intel at the moment? Right now, this is my old workhorse. Let's go ahead and I'm going to double click this last quick save here. There we go. And in fact, if you want to see more specifically, if you go here to Lumi questions and you want to see, if you go to the description in this video, you'll see pretty much how I'm set up now. I don't know that I've been eyeballing Threadripper for some AMD Threadripper CPU. It might be nice for some simulations and rendering options. But as far as just like my general work machine, it kind of has to be mobile because I teach and you know, do demos and stuff, and I'm on the road a lot. So when I take this thing around, I want to make sure that I have everything mobile. So it kind of is a little bit limiting as far as power is concerned, but hopefully upcoming laptop generation will be good. So I'm just going to really quickly recreate what we had. I'm just going to do it the manual way. So again, we're going to slice through here, and we have groups turned off. That's okay. So now that we have these, let's go ahead. We'll have groups turned on, and I'm going to change this resolution. We don't need that much. I'm going to do 128. Go ahead and Dynamesh this. Control Shift A, Control W, Control Shift A, Control W, Control Shift A, Control W. Okay, so now that we've got these all sliced up, we can continue Dynameshing these. If you want to isolate this, you can isolate this one, for example. You can go through here and you can smooth, or you can just go to your deformation menu, which you've talked about here. And you can do like a polish by feature, since we don't have any real features here, or just run a polish or a smooth, or just go in here with your smooth brush, and you can kind of smooth these things out. And you can select this one here. So now if we grab little pieces of these ones over here, do Control Shift A, that'll grab all of them. And now you can see if we invert that, let's go ahead and do Control Shift, and we'll just go ahead and smooth out this end here. And then we'll Control Shift select this one, we'll smooth this end out here. So now I do Control Shift, grab these couple little pieces of these ones, do Control Shift A, that'll grow visibility. And now you'll see we slice through here. We've got both of our separate polygroups here. Like so, if we want to split these off into their own subtool, what we can do is we can go ahead, since these are visible, so we can do Control, and these, let's make this one obvious. So we've got this one, Control Shift drag to invert, this one, oops, this one, this one. If we want to split these off into their own subtool, what we can do is do, under our split menu, there's split hidden, and that'll go ahead and split this one off into its own subtool, and then we've got this one and its own subtool here. And yeah, so we've done a marzipan, what was the link? Marzipan slice. Yeah. Now the image, you know, it kind of had some mixing going on in between those, but probably you can kind of just fudge that. So let's do Control Shift A. Oh, you know what? When I did Dynamesh slice here, it had an extra little piece out here. That's why we have this little garbage piece here. So let's go ahead and delete hidden on that one. So you just got to be really careful when you have groups turned on that you don't have any hanging, you know, flat groups hanging out, because it will dynamesh those together. Hope that makes sense. Cool. All right, so if we want to clean up some of this stuff, when I work on anything that's left or right, and you know, I want to say go in here and start clipping this stuff up, or you know, resurfacing these things, it's a little bit easier. Instead of going in here and turning off X and then holding down Control Shift or Control and masking one side and then doing my operations, what I'll usually end up doing is I'll turn off X symmetry, go ahead and hold down Alt while dragging over that one. We'll just do a quick delete hidden. I'll just work on one side at a time here. So I'm going to hold down Shift and bent up arrow to shoot this to the top. And really quickly, I'm just going to do an insert Z-sphere here. If I just want to see the boot and the Z-sphere alone, I'm going to turn off the eyeball with the selected subtool. That'll turn off everything. And then I can hit the nameplate to turn that one on, and then the eyeball to turn that Z-sphere on. Select the Z-sphere, go into E for scale. We'll scale this thing down, go into transparency mode. Of course, you can topologize across symmetry, but since I'm not, I'll just do this one side here. I'm just hiding, turn on transparency, I'm just hiding this Z-sphere inside the mesh. I'm going to go to Matte Cap Pearl, which will be in here, and then do like a mid-gray. And now if we go down here to topology, we can go into edit topology mode, hit Q to go into draw, and now we can just kind of start recreating a very nice version of this rubber sole really quick. So I'm just going to go through here, and we'll just retopologize it. So of course you can use the topology brush for this. You can use ZRemesher for this if you wanted to go and make separate polygroups. I'm going for maximum control here, so I want to plot every single point exactly where I want it. And if we want to kind of build this sole out, I mean, you can do it any which way. You can go through here and you can do just like a capped end and just kind of swing around here. And at the end of the day, if you're just going to smooth this thing out anyway, that might be the most economical choice. And then of course you can hit W and move this thing around however you'd like. So that'll work. Here, we can also go through here and we can just put a line right through the middle, and you can also have it swing back around if you want to, you know, maybe give it a little bit more leeway. And then same thing for this side here. We can put a point in the middle. It's going to terminate these things, and we can just drag a line right through here. You see, I'm not really concerned about if these things match up just yet, because I can always change it. I'm just more concerned about getting that surface going. So we'll go ahead and close these up. And then again, I'm just hopping back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So you can kind of quickly, and I've also got my brush size pretty small, so I'm not selecting a whole bunch of things as I move things. And your brush size, I usually just hit S, and then I go into move, which is W. Q is draw, move is W. You can hold down Alt and delete, and then redraw and move this stuff around here. And then again, we're just going to hop around here and go ahead and close these things off here. Now again, because this is just going to be a flat rubber sole, that we're going to put tread on this thing. In fact, you know, if this thing is we can change that. We can change that once we get it built out. So if it's too thick to put tread on, I'm going to make it a little bit thinner. Then we're going to add our tread, and then we'll kind of merge those together and probably Z-remesh them together to kind of get the boot detail that we need, for example. Okay, so the question about creating a surface of the marzipan slice. It turned out funny. Thanks anyways. Yeah, oh, as far as like the noise that's in there, I'm having a hard time. Like I can model this thing together and do that, but if you're talking about like these little crunchy things, that would just be like surface noise, I think, if that's what you're talking about. I've never made a marzipan slice. I know it's gonna blow everybody's mind, but my marzipan slicing skills may not be up to par. But if you wanted to have that kind of look, let's go ahead and do, you know what, let's just do under our split menu here, we'll do a split to, we can do split the parts, and that'll work. And that'll go ahead and split these things out, so I can go ahead and hide this one. And now between these two, you can kind of manage them separately. So we can go in here and transpose this in a bit. There we go. And then if you did want to get that look, I mean, it kind of looks like in the reference, they're kind of merged together. So at this point, what I might do is go ahead and fill these with different colors. So if we go in here, we can do, let's turn off polyframe here. We can go to color, fill object here. And then now on this one, we can go to color, fill object. I have a hotkey set for that. So I can just hit that button. And then now with these things, different colors, I can now merge them down. And that's just under your merge menu. And I'm going to turn groups off, and I can just dynamesh these together, and that'll kind of make it all one mesh. And then I can go in here to my surface noise and kind of zoom in a little bit. And we can kind of, let's see, add some cracks here, noise scale, color blend. I guess we don't need any real color blend here. And then for our strength, we can go ahead and crank that up. And then our scale, I'm going to make that bigger here, so you can kind of see if you can get that kind of baked bread look with some of these options maybe. Let's see, magnify my mask, noise scale. Let's go ahead and reset that. Strength. Yeah, something kind of like this. And then, of course, you can hit OK, and that won't actually apply it. It'll just kind of give you that look. And then if you want to kind of dictate, because it kind of looks like the outer surface doesn't have a whole lot of that, so what we can do is we can kind of mask where I would kind of see that noise is just more on the interior surface. And then we can Control Tap to invert that. And then before I drop this, I'm going to go to Layers, New Layer, and I'm also going to go to Morph Target here. Where's my Morph Target at? Under Surface, Morph Target. We're going to store a Morph Target. So I can go ahead and say, okay, noise, I want to go ahead and apply to my mesh. And because I didn't have a whole lot of resolution, it didn't do a great job. You'd want more resolution, but I think that'll work fine for this. And now that we have this on a layer, I can Control Swipe to unmask that. And then we can go in here to our layer, and we can kind of dial in. It's like, you know what, that was a little stronger than I expected. So you can kind of dial in the strength. Or if you want to over crank it, just go down here. You can really crank it up or invert it if you want. It actually looks like invert might be even better. And then if you get the look you want, you can go ahead and say, okay, bake all. That'll bake it all down to your mesh. And then because we have a morph target still, we can go BMO, turn off RGB. And now you can morph back to your original if you want to clean this up even more. Or you could do switch, and now you can morph in exactly where you want that kind of chewed up, bready look. Cool. Is there a way to apply a checker in ZBrush to see if any stretches in UVs in UV Master? Yeah, I think so. Let me see. Yeah, there definitely is. I'm just not sure if there's one native. Let me look at that real quick. So for anybody wondering, UV Master. You know what? Let's UV something funner than that. I'm going to go to my comma key here. Let's go to Tool, and we'll grab our demo head here. I'll hide that. So we've got our demo head. I'm going to go into Subtool. We don't need the eyes, the mouth bag. I'm going to hit Delete on that subtool. So we've just got the head here. It's all, let's go down to the lowest here. We don't have to kill our geometry. We can go down to subdivision level 1. And then when we go to Z plugin, we can go over here to UV Master, and we can do work on a clone. So here's our clone we need to work on. And you're going to see this clone doesn't have any subdivision history. And we got symmetry. It is symmetry. If you had different polygroups for the different areas, like if we wanted to cut the eyeballs or the nostrils or any of that stuff out, what we can do is we can make polygroups for those. A bunch of different ways. You can go into your ZModeler brush and you can kind of paint these and make them their own polygroup. I'm going to do Control Shift and grab those rings and then do an, let's invert that. Let's hit Control W. And now on this one, what we can do is grab this one. Let's see if we can just do an auto groups real quick. And I don't want to do a mirror and weld, so I'm going to grab this one here, and then this one here, Control W. There we go. So now we've got these two polygroups. We can grab both of them, hit Control W, make them all one polygroup. So now that we have polygroups here, we can turn polygroups on. We have symmetry. We can go ahead and unwrap this mesh, and then we can flatten it, kind of look where our UVs are. Looks fine to me. And then we can go unflatten. We can go to copy UVs, and then we can go to back to our original. And we can go, no, this is the one with subdivision history, so we can go to paste UVs. And now, if we go back up to subdivision level 3, we have an object with UVs. Now, if we go over here to texture map and create, there's new from masking, polypaint, there's UV map, new from UV map. Let's see, so that one will show you what your UVs actually look like. Let's go down to subdivision level 1 and redo that. Yeah, you can turn the texture on and off at this point too as well. So we'll do one from UV map. So here's where our UV map is. If we do from UV check, this is going to check and see if it'll be red if you have any overlapping UVs, which we don't. But if you wanted to bring in a checker pattern, do we have one in here? We have a brick one, we have a stones one. All you need to do is to go into like texture, import, bring in your favorite utility or checker pattern, and then you can just grab it here in your texture map, and that'll assign your texture to your object. And this stuff is just temporary as well, so you can kind of see where there's any stretching in your UVs and all that good stuff. And then if you're done looking at that, just turn your texture off, and you're good to go. So again, turn your texture on, select whatever texture you want, or import a texture, then you can check your UV stretching using that kind of stuff. You'll notice this one is transparent all the way through, and any texture you bring in that's pure black is going to render as transparent. So something to keep in mind here, like that. But yeah, you can check for seams with that kind of thing. If I wanted to do a better job on that seam placement, which I probably do, I can go back to our demo head, which is our clone that we were working on, and instead of having the seam, so if I go over here and do, where's my check seams? Use existing UV seams here. Oh, there's check seams. You can see it put the seams right down the middle of the face. Not really what I wanted. So, I mean, it just did what I told it to do. So I'm going to enable control painting, and I want to protect this. Oops, let's go in our standard brush here, turn on RGB, and if you turn on protect, it'll give you a color that'll tell ZBrush to protect this area, and then you can go to attract. I want to attract this area back here. There we go. So now when I say, let's go ahead and unwrap, and now we can do check seams, it puts seams elsewhere. Much better. So what I can do now is go ahead and copy those UVs, and again, go back to this original one, paste UVs, and then if you wanted to check, turn on texture, and then go import your favorite texture, checker texture, and just throw it in there. Cool. Yeah, I've never been in the culinary recreation, but I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, you could, if you wanted a whole lot of control that was very specific, or surface noise wasn't doing it for you, you could go in there and sculpt it. You could go in there with a custom alpha and kind of stamp those kind of cracks. You can make a bunch of those kind of cracky things. You can use nanomesh to kind of tile like bread pilling around your object and kind of keep them separate if you wanted to. A lot of different ways to skin a cat in 3D, but that's a tougher one. Cool. Nice. Okay, so we got that, and I guess we can hop back in here. And so, okay, so when I left this thing alone, I'm going to change it back to MatCat Pearl. We're going to drop that to mid-gray. And the only reason I'm bringing it back down to mid-gray is just so I can see those lines a little bit better. The Z-sphere is active still, so if I go down here to topology, it's still in edit topology. If it ever goes out of edit topology, like if a quick save happens, it'll throw you out of edit topology. Just go back in there and hit that edit topology button, and you're going to see all of this stuff is also in my custom menu. So it's just a little bit easier for me to hop back in there really quickly. Again, I'm in draw mode, so while if I hit W, I'm in move mode. If I hit Q, I'm in draw mode, and now I can just continue to kind of go through here. And again, we're just going to kind of push these rebuild this sole. So I'm going to rebuild the sole. I'm going to pop that off into its own subtool. And then we'll put the tread on there. Her sole's a little bit thick right now to put tread on, but that's okay. We can fix that. And also any other changes. This heel looks like it kind of does something wonky, so we can kind of fine tune that. I'm not using any reference right now. I should probably pull up some shoe reference. Kind of see what kind of sci-fi boot heel I want to do. If there's anything out there that kind of is interesting, I can kind of implement here. And again, I'm just going back and forth just to kind of put these chains together. And like I said, we're going to use on the rest of the boot probably ZRemesher to do the heavy lifting, so I don't have to go through here. I mean, if you want full total control, I tend to use Z-spheres, topology brush sometimes. But if I want to plot each individual point, I think Z-spheres is probably my best bet. And then W, and then Q, and then now we're almost done. And if you don't want to, see how these don't really line up, I can always fix that later. Even in ZModel, I don't even have to use ZRemesher. Or actually, I can use ZRemesher to kind of give me new topology once I have it kind of laid out. I can make polygroups on a simpler mesh. It's kind of up to you. But I think this will be fine. Because again, this is just going to be placeholder for a slightly more robust surface. Although I can kind of pull these ones over. And it's like, okay, now that I've pulled these things out correctly, I need more resolution here. So I can go back into draw and just kind of split these back, move them out. If I want to get rid of this one, I can just put a point there, hold down Alt and click it. And then I'll go ahead and delete that extraneous point, which I don't really want. I'm also going to need to worry about capping this thing along the top. It might be kind of hard to see through here. I can go into solo mode, and I can just put my lines across here, but I'm probably just going to use ZModeler to cap that. So now that I have my surface built, if I hit A, that's going to give me an adaptive preview. You're going to see it subdivided here, and that's under adaptive skin. Your density set it to. I'm going to put that at 1. So now we're just getting a 1-to-1 with our polygons. Everything looks fine. Now we're seeing through the object. So we're not seeing through the object. We see this side and we see this side. So when we hit Make Adaptive Skin, or my custom menu, I've got it here. What that's going to do, we're still messing with our Z-sphere. That puts a skin Z-sphere out here in our tool menu. So I can go, if I hit Append, it's going to throw it way down at the bottom of my stack here. If I do Insert, that'll go ahead and insert the skin Z-sphere right underneath this Z-sphere here. So now I've got a skin Z-sphere. If I wanted to continue retopologizing things, I could just use this Z-sphere. I could go down to my next subtool. I can turn both of those on, and then I can go into my, hit A to go out of your adaptive skin preview, hit delete topology, and now you can just keep using the Z-sphere. And again, all of this stuff is down here in your topology menu here. So edit topology, delete topology, skin thickness is in here, adaptive skin, all this stuff that I use is in my custom menu right here. But I don't need the Z-sphere anymore, so I'm going to just go ahead and delete that. And now I've got my sole, and I've got my boot concept. Speaking of boot concepts, if you go to any of the links I've sent you, but also probably this is the easiest one. Actually, you know what? It'll be even better. Let's go here. My profile. If you go to this, if you go to my ArtStation page, you're going to see there's a boot ZBrush tutorial. That'll have a couple images and also an image you can click on that'll kind of walk you through the creation of that commander boot that off that guy I made. And it's got, see the boot tutorial, it's 18 videos. Kind of goes through the same process we're doing here. I do things a little bit differently, but same idea. Let me get a drink of water here. Hey, thanks for showing up, Narrett. I work for Certain Affinity in Austin, Texas. Now, I do want to keep throwing that up. Yeah, so that thing today, the streaming event, is at noon Pacific time. So you can check that out. Be around lunchtime today. Not for me, but for that. Cool. So we've got this, and I'm going to go out of solo mode. So you're going to see when I retopologize this, it doesn't shrink the mesh, but when you're giving it less points, it has to average between those points, so it's going to kind of shrink your object a little bit. So what I'm going to do is go into my deformation menu, and we can just inflate this by like 1, and that'll just kind of give us our form back. And now we can just kind of make any sort of modifications we need to the actual geometry. I'm going to go ahead and turn on matte cap gray and white again, and then I can kind of move this stuff out. Now, like I was saying before, I can go into ZModeler and fix any of this stuff. So if I didn't like that triangle, I can just go in here with my move brush. And then if I want to continue this line up, I can just hover over this edge and we'll do a split. We can kind of split this one, and then we'll split this edge. And now we can hover over this point. We'll do bridge 2 points, and we'll bridge these 2 points. And then we can go in here to delete edge, and we just go boom, 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 boom. There we go. So now we can kind of move this stuff around. Now, like I said before, we have double turned on. So if I go down here to display properties, we can turn double off, and now we can, this is really another thing just to make sure, because sometimes when you do an adaptive skin and you have double turned on, let's say you go in here and it's like, okay, I want to, let's do a deformation. And again, when I say deformation, it's under our tool menu here. If we just want to do an inflate, and now we're inflating up and it's shrinking your object, you're like, well, it looks fine. Make sure you go down here and you turn double off, and now you're going to see, oops, it was actually flipped. It wasn't, but I flipped it earlier, but okay, now it's flipped, now everything's right, and now when I inflate, it'll inflate the right way. If you want to see through, and if you want to start bridging these things, you can go like bridge edges, and you can bridge these edges. What I tend to do on this kind of stuff, if I'm just smoothing it later and dynameshing it, I don't really care what this geometry looks like. So in this case, what I would do is hover over an edge, and you can do 2 different close. If you do a convex hole, it'll go ahead and kind of, it didn't do a terrible job at all, but you can also do concave hole, and that'll just kind of do a close hole operation. Same thing as if you went to geometry, modify topology, and did a close holes, wherever that is. I have it in my custom menu, of course, right here. So same kind of thing, and this will just give it its own polygroup as well. So you can isolate that. If you did, I've also noticed that sometimes this is a okay solution. Even if you wanted to do a little bit of cleanup here, you can go to like delete edge and just kind of hop through and kind of delete these things into quads. There might be a quadrangulate under modify topology as well. If I remember correctly, or maybe I'm having a fever dream right now. But you can also just go through here and kind of clean this up a little bit. You know, get rid of these triangulated edges. And you'd be surprised, it can actually give you pretty quick, decent topology results. But again, I really don't care what that looks like, because what I'm going to do, if I hit D, you're going to see actually when I did that close holes operation, it creased that edge. The rest of these need to also be creased, so I can just manually go through. And let's do a crease edge loop partial. And the reason I'm doing edge loop partial is I kind of want it to stop at these corners here. If I do edge loop complete, it'll probably still, it goes all the way through, which is what I don't want. So yeah, again, edge loop partial, it'll stop at any T-junction there. And now I can go through and just kind of quickly crease where I want to. And now I can hit D, and let's go ahead and crease in here. Instead of doing edge loop partial, let's just do crease edge. And I just go 1, 2, 3, 4. And now hit D. Hold down Alt to uncrease. And now I can go in here and kind of clean up a little bit my shoe. We can go and turn off the polyframe here. So there's the bottom of our surface there that we're going to use to. And now because we have fewer points, it's a little bit easier to kind of go in and make a nice, you know, more consistent mesh with edges here. Cool. Yeah, I would only remove the triangles if I wanted to do, you know, if I didn't want to sit there and bridge or ZRemesh, I can just do a close holes, and I can remove any triangles that are offending me and then go and clean up that up a little bit. But yeah, in this case, I wouldn't need to. You know, and really, you know, the other reason I wouldn't want to have triangles is if I wanted to do like insert single edge loop, it's a little easier to kind of go through and kind of do this kind of stuff. If you don't have triangles, obviously, that kind of thing there. Now, instead of building in control loops, if I wanted to soften these edges a little bit, what I'd probably do is go to geometry, and then under my dynamic, I would say, you know what, subdivide this thing up to 4 times. It's not really doing it, it's just a preview. And then under crease, I'll change my crease level to like 3. So now when I do Shift D and then D again, it'll keep it creased up 3, and then uncrease all, and then do that. So now you're gonna see up here, we're getting a little pinchy stuff going on in here. That's just an artifact of these triangles being in here. So what I can do is add an edge ring around here, which we should be able to do. Let's try this. Let's do an inset polygroup. island region. So what that's going to do is kind of pull this in, but there's going to be a lot of cleanup in here. So one thing I might consider is hold down Control Shift, actually hit W, Control tap that polygroup, and then we're going to do E, which is scale, and then Control Shift, and that'll kind of bring in, that'll kind of force an edge ring around there, and now we can kind of use W to kind of pull in that. So I don't got to do a lot of cleanup here. Now for this one, I can go ahead and do, I'm just going to do an uncrease all, which is under your crease menu there. And if I want to make this top one all in polygroup again, I can isolate this one, do Control Shift X, which is visibility grow, and then hit Control W. So now we got all one polygroup here. We can crease this again. We can do crease PG, which is crease polygroup. Again, this is all in your crease menu here. And then also change your crease tolerance, and then crease that, and that'll go ahead and just crease those edges that we had creased before. And now it's a much cleaner line around that top. So it also kept my smooth subdivision. So if I change that to 5 and my crease level to 4, you're going to see, you know, we're getting a much tighter line around those edges there. Everything else looks fine. I'm going to go in here while this is previewed, preferences, edit, turn off align cursor to surface, and we can just kind of go through here. You don't have to do that last part, but that's just a preference of mine. And we can kind of get this to match our concept a little bit better, like so. And now we've got that sole built out. Now, like I said before, if we go and add tread to this, we're going to make this very, very thick. So what I might be inclined to do is hit Shift D. Let's go ahead and Alt paint this one. If you want to, you can isolate that, hit Control W just to make it a polygroup if you want. But you can also do, if you Alt paint something and then you run an operation on it, it'll automatically do that. So we'll just go ahead and polygroup all these things, and then we'll go ahead and do QMesh, polygroup all. But when we Alt paint something, it also tags it as a single poly, so you can do either one. And now if I start QMeshing, it'll add an edge loop or kind of QMesh through. If I hold down Shift, again, it'll just push along that surface normal. So I can kind of thin these out. Let's go ahead and QMesh polygroup island here. And again, hold down Shift, and it's kind of push these back. So when we add tread, it'll kind of go back up to that original thickness there. Now at this point, we have 2 separate polygroups, which is fine. We can do polygroups for this thing here as well. You can also now go to polygroup, a single poly, and you can tap. It'll make an all-in polygroup. You can tap Alt to kind of cycle through different polygroups here. Just kind of break up your mesh however you'd like. And now you can do a crease polygroup later on if you lost your creasing or something like that. Yeah, so everything's looking fine. If we hit D, that'll give us our dynamic preview. So again, we've kind of pushed that sole up, and now we can go ahead and add our tread real quick. Cool, yeah, and definitely check out the ZBrush event later today. So question, we need triangles in a game. Yeah, and every polygon you throw into Engine is going to triangulate itself anyways. It's just a little bit easier to work on a mesh that isn't triangulated for poly modeling operations. But yeah, when you export it, it'll just be tries. If you look at your poly count, it'll usually be a try count, and that's the poly count you should probably pay attention to, not necessarily your face count. Your try count is always going to be consistent. Your face count, I haven't used face count in a long time. It's always been triangle count. You can also go through here if you want to use like H polish. You can kind of H polish this out. In fact, you can hit D. And you can use H polish, so while you're getting this dynamic preview, you can go through here. You're still only deforming your very simple mesh here, but you can use your polish brushes to kind of even your mesh out if you'd like. And then Shift D here, and we can just go through here really quickly and just do a little cleanup pass, like so. And if we wanted to pull, give me a second. Excuse me. If you wanted to pull the upper surface out, and we don't want to add depth because we're going to be adding tread to the bottom, but if you wanted to pull this one up, what you could do is you could do QMesh, or you can hit W, Control tap that polygroup, and then just hold down Shift and kind of pull that up a bit. So enough of that. I think we've got our rubber sole in there, and we won't do that one yet, but we can go ahead and add our tread. So I'm going to go into solo mode here, and let's add some tread. I'm going to be using the topology brush, and I want to make sure I'm getting a fairly accurate representation. Actually, let's move this heel back just a little bit. We'll kind of even this out. I want this to be more of a straight line here. And again, because we're pushing around so few polygons, it's easy to kind of modify your geometry envelope, and then when you hit D to subdivide, you know, you're still getting a nice clean result, but you're basically moving around a low-res cage underneath. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this off, and I'm going to apply those subdivisions, and I'm also, I mean, it's not a whole lot of polygons here, but what I am going to do is I'm just going to delete lower, and now I'll be able to do BTO topology brush, and we can just go through and start making some tread. So let's see the easiest way. One of the easier ways to do this is I can do Control-Shift-Tap, and I can Control-Shift-Tap all those. Let's Control-Shift-Tap these ones here. And now if we go over here to stroke, I think this will work. I don't think I've done it quite this way before, but we'll give it a shot. I'm going to curve functions here. We'll frame our border with a mesh, and now when we do BTO, we can add maybe like an inner topology ring here. Now we can cut across from side to side, and we'll just slice through. Now as we slice through, it'll be adding polygons here. And we can also just kind of skip the middle, and we can kind of just draw through here. It should, let's see, let's make my brush a little bit bigger here. There we go. So we can kind of go through here, and again, we're just, every other one will probably end up being tread. And I don't have any reference up of anything specific. It'll just be simple tread. I don't plan on seeing the bottom of her boots a whole lot. So feel free to add or use as much or as little to kind of flesh these things out. And we can put some more tread in the middle in a second here. And then, well, again, we'll do another ring around here, like so. And then we'll just go all the way through. Let's see if this will work here. We can, and it doesn't seem to be doing a great job on this side here, but I can do hold down Alt and drag, and that'll kind of clean up. And now I can kind of see where I need to make my modifications here. Then we can Alt drag through here and delete these, and now we can match these things up again. Come on. Match these up, match these up. There we go. And I'll put another little corner over here. So we've got these meshes here. If I want to give these things thickness, I need to make my brush size a certain, you know, whatever size you want, and then tap, and that'll give you brush thickness. If you undo that and make your brush size bigger, it'll make your sole thicker. Of course, you can use the modeler later to make these as thick or as thin as you want. You can also do no thickness. If you go down here to brush size, draw size of 1 and tap, that'll just go ahead and give you a flat plane that you can go and clean up. But with Q mesh, it should be easy enough. So I'm just going to go ahead and give it whatever thickness I want. And now I can do a split menu, split mask points here. And we've got these, tread. Now, of course, I don't want every other single one of these. So what I'm going to do is Q mesh, single poly. Here, hover over face, Q mesh, single poly, and we just pull back through. So these ones I don't need. Like so. And then same thing on this one. Now this one, let's go ahead and make sure if we turn double off, okay, everything's facing the right way. But we might have to pull these ones out. There we go. So it looks like these ones gave us thickness out this way. These ones gave us thickness out that way too, but they weren't quite as thick as I would have wanted them. We can fix that later though. Yes, all quads behind the scenes are triangles. Yeah, and also if you are animating something, you know, and you want them to deform predictably, you're going to want to put your edge loops in concentric rings and make sure you have nice quads. That's still not to say it doesn't get triangulated in Engine. It just when it goes to triangulate, or you go to subdivide a quadrangulated mesh, it will just behave a little bit more predictably than just something that's triangulated. Now, if you want to very much control your quadrangulated mesh into Engine with triangles, then I would triangulate your mesh, and then you can actually see where the triangles are, and you can go through and you can flip your edges around. But usually, it's pretty rare that I have any real serious problems with that. Okay, so we got our boot, we got our tread, If we wanted to do an interior tread now, what we can do is go ahead and tap our concept here, and we'll go ahead and hide that temporarily. And we can go back to our mesh here. This is our mesh with our, that's our base mesh here. So we're using this mesh to kind of draw on. So we can kind of go through here now. Let's go BTO, and we'll turn off poly paint. We don't really need that. We also don't really need our head there. Okay, so the interior mesh here, let's go ahead and we'll just do another loop around like so, and then we can kind of cap this off, and we can do an interior loop. And I can't draw a straight line to save my life, obviously. Let's make that inner loop a little bit thicker. But you can always fix this in the Z modeler side. So if you're concerned about that, you can go through here and you can manually move your meshes around. That'll work. We can also put mesh through here. Let's go ahead and do that. If we want to alternate, you can also just go all the way through, you know, whatever kind of tread patterns you're looking for. And now you can kind of go through here and divide these up. And if you want to put a line right down the middle to close that up, you can. And there's your new mesh. We can give it some thickness here. Now, if you wanted to give it the exact same thickness, then you probably should have remembered. I probably should have remembered what the draw size. I think it was like 11. So we go ahead and do that. We can go ahead and do split masked points here. And now with this one, I can go ahead and you can go in here with slide. You can do slide, edge loop complete, and that'll allow you to kind of slide these edges around. You can do move point, or you can just kind of mask a point here and then go in with your move brush and kind of rearrange some of these points here. Let's see, slide this over here. There you go, kind of fix that a little bit. So if we wanted these interior spaces, what I can do is I can duplicate this thing off, and then we can go, okay, I don't want any of these. So I'm going to mark this on my duplicate, then we can Q mesh single poly, pull that through, and then now we're still in single poly mode. So if I want to, I can do every other one here. Let's see if this is going to match up the way I want. Not that not that it's super important here, but if we wanted to go, let's start here. So Q mesh a single poly, we'll do this one, and again I'm just pulling back. I'm getting rid of every other one, like so. And if I wanted to separate these two, what I can do is go into solo mode, and I can do a quick bevel, edge loop complete, and now we can go Q mesh single poly and pull that back through. And then I can like mask one of these, or I can just grab a little piece of this one, Control Shift A, mask and invert that, and move this over. Or I can go into move topological, which is under our move brush here. You can actually go hit B, M, and then choose move topological, or you can just grab your move brush and go into our brush settings here, auto masking, and then choose topological. You can change your range down. If you want to move individual parts, you can make your brush size really big, or you can make your brush size really small. If you make your brush size 1, you can just go through here and just kind of move these individually. You don't need to worry about polygroups or masking by polygroups. You can do that as well, but since we have separate polygroups on either side, maybe not be the best choice. So now because we've duplicated this one off, we can now take this one. It's like, okay, I don't want this outer ring. So what I can do is I can isolate this top polygroup, and we still have double turned on, don't we? Then we can select this edge here, polyloop polygroup, if it'll do it. Let me see. Is it not? I mean, I can do this one here. You know what? Let's just do it this way. So now we got these edge rings here. So now that this is a separate polygroup, you can do Q mesh polygroup all, and then just pull Q mesh polygroup island. Let's pull this through, and now we've got this middle piece here. And now, if we wanted to kind of shrink this in, what we can do is hold down Control Shift. Let's go to Select Lasso, and if you do Select Lasso, it'll go ahead and grab an entire edge ring. So now you can hit Control W, and now we can go in here to Q mesh polygroup island or polygroup all, and again hold down Shift, and that'll kind of shrink in along that surface normal. And let's say we don't need these ones, so Q mesh single poly, Pull those through. And now what I can do, let's even this out a little bit. Actually, we can probably get rid of this. Let's go to Insert, Single Edge, we'll pull down Alt, and kind of move this around a little bit. And we can tap these ones and kind of move these ones around a little bit here. We still have Move Topological on, so I don't need to worry too much about my brush size. And now if I wanted to do like a more intricate pattern or something on here, I could go and add more polygroups in here, or insert single edge loops or multiple edge loops. If I do multiple, I can kind of just drag through here and create. Let's go through here and add something like this. And now I can go through here and do like Q mesh, polygroup all, and build out kind of tank treads in here. I can pull in and kind of build these out, or I can alt tap through here. And now I can do Q mesh, polygroup all. I can just pull through and get rid of those if I want. That might be fine. Whatever you want to do for your tank treads, and again, or for your feet tread. And again, these are still separate, so you still can go in here. If you want to match these a little bit better, I probably should have had more resolution. One way to add easy resolution is I'm going to go ahead and do a crease tolerance here. I'm going to hit Control D, which is going to give me mesh here. So I can go, here's my subdivision 1, here's subdivision 2. If I did delete lower, you're going to see what it did is you can kind of just see where it divided each face equally. And now that I've got more resolution, I can go through here and I kind of match these up a little bit better along here. Again, this is all stuff we can clean up later. Not a huge deal, but makes it a little bit nicer to work with eventually. We can kind of go through here and pull these out like so. And we probably need some more tread back here. I'm going to alt tap this one. We're going to go to BTO and just really quickly we'll add another loop in here, another loop in here, and then we'll just drag straight across and just kind of fan this out. Set this back to 11-ish. Go ahead and split hidden, or I'm sorry, split mask points. And now we can go through here and do Q mesh, single poly, and we'll just pull back through every other one. Something like that. Obviously, if you're, again, like I keep mentioning, if you want to do very precise treads, I've did like a steel toe hot weather safety boot, Marine Corps boot a little while back, and the treads on the bottom of those feet were very accurate. And basically what I did was just take this mesh here and go into texture, import, bring in whatever image you want to use for, you can use Google Images, and then you can just add that to your spotlight and paint that on, and then use that image to kind of dictate where your treads end up going. Yes, we're cobbling some boots right now. Yeah, and you can put whatever type of pattern you want on here for real. Not a huge deal. I'm just doing something quick and dirty, obviously, and I don't have any reference up to do anything specific. So again, it's just kind of putting in something. I might go back and change this, but for demo purposes, I think this will be fine. Here and then here. If you want to also, let's go ahead on this one. I'm just going to do a quick auto groups, and then I can hit Control to tap this auto group here, and now we can kind of rearrange some of this. So if this isn't quite working, I can really quickly go through here and then do Control Shift, drag out a copy, and then rotate with R and kind of move these pieces around here. Another thing you can do, you don't even need to, you can turn mask by polygroups up to 100, and that way you don't even need to have the mask here, and that's global. You don't have to do that for every brush. So even my move brush with topological off, since these are all separate polygroups here, you can just go through here. Now these ones aren't, so I can isolate these ones and then do an auto groups, and this is just under the polygroup menu down in here. You can do auto groups in there. So now I can just quickly kind of go through, and let's fan out these edges here. And if you're worried about like, well, I'm not going all the way through, I'm not a big fan of like going into ZModeler and doing, you can do move by brush radius or infinite depth, and that'll go through and move all these points infinitely. If you don't want to worry about that, what I'll usually end up doing is just kind of move these things around how I want. And then I can just go back through and then ZModeler our Q mesh, my thickness back. So move these things into place. Like so. And again, if I want to give more resolution to kind of round any of these things out, you can just go in here to insert single edge loop, and we'll give a little bit more information of these ones, and we can kind of pull these out. And now what I can do is go into solo mode. I'm going to go to the side, I'm going to do select lasso, I'm going to grab all of these top pieces here, do delete hidden, and now I can just do Q mesh all polygons. And now we can just pull these back through like so. Now, I have double turned on, so if I turn double off, you're going to see I need to go into flip, which for you guys will be display properties down here. And then I go ahead and bring those back. So let's say we've got our treads right where we want them. Let's go ahead and merge all these treads into one subtool here. So I'm going to hold down Shift. Well, you can kind of see them in your subtool menu, all these different ones here. If you didn't, you could rearrange your subtools, but I'm just going to go ahead and merge these down. I have a hotkey for that, but for merge, it'll be here, merge down. Now these are all one. If I hit D, that'll go ahead and give me my dynamic preview. These ones were creased, obviously these ones weren't. So let's do an uncrease all, and then we'll do a crease tolerance of like 52, and we'll go ahead and crease those. Right now we're getting a pretty strong crease. Let's see, geometry, dynamic. So we're smoothing up to 5, but we're creasing at level of 4. If we drop that to like crease level of 2, you'll see we get a little bit of a softer, more rubbery result there. Same thing for this. If we alt tap this one, this was just our placeholder, I believe. Yeah. So we don't need that anymore. We can delete that. And now we have our tread and we have our original mesh here. If we hit D, it's subdividing up originally to 5 and then creasing at 4. If we keep dropping that down to like crease level of 2, again, that'll just give us a more rubbery kind of look going on there, a little softer look. So if we like what we see, what we can do is we can now merge these down. Let's make sure, let's select that one and this one. Let's make sure these things line up a little bit more. There we go. So if we want to make this all one contiguous mesh, all we got to do is let's go in here and make sure you apply these subdivisions before we merge, and certainly before we dynamesh. I'm going to merge these two down, and it actually reconstructed. So if we go down here, you can see we have 6 subdivision levels, but I want this to be all one mesh. So I'm going to go into dynamesh here, and we can turn off, I mean, you can leave project on, but I'm going to be dynameshing in a pretty high resolution here. Let's see, we'll go up to like 1480, hit no. Let's go a little higher than that. And I'm hitting no. I don't need to reconstruct subdivisions, or I don't need to freeze those subdivision history. I'm just kind of trying to get this look. And now we can go through here with H polish, and we can kind of clean this up. Make sure you turn your mask by polygroups down to 0, because you're not trying to keep those. And you can go through here and H polish or smooth these points together. And again, the more careful you were when you were constructing these, the easier your cleanup's going to be. Not that this is difficult work. We'll just kind of put these together here. And again, this is ZRemesh. I'm sorry, this is Dynamesh. So you can change your resolution. You can add anything you want. You can stamp in detail now if you want. But I'm going to keep it simple, and I'm just going to ZRemesh this. ZRemesh does a couple things. Number one, it keeps your poly count down. It'll keep your files a lot lighter. And it also makes it a little bit easier to work with if you did want to go back through and like do any sort of box modeling or anything like that. So now that we've done a little bit of cleanup here, you can go through and smooth if you'd like. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ZRemesh this thing. Now, any place you want to keep a border on here, it's a little bit, I mean, you can go in here with like, say, BZ, the ZRemesh guides, and that just, you can put a curve anywhere you want. You can also frame any curves that you want. The one I'm most concerned about is this one up here. So, but luckily, you can also, with ZRemesher, you can just turn on keep groups, and I'm going to turn smooth groups down to 0. And what that'll do is essentially do the effect of placing a curve around a polygroup that you have. Now, with keep groups on, it's going to do it on every little thing, which I don't necessarily need. Really, I just need it up here, and possibly on this interior surface here. But yeah, that might be kind of a pain. So what I'm going to do is I'm definitely going to keep this one. Control Shift Drag to invert that. Control W. And now I've got a polygroup here. If I turn off line, polygroup here. I can say keep groups. It's going to destroy this mesh. It's not going to destroy it. It's going to replace this mesh. So if I want to snap back to it, or I just want to do a preview here, I can go in here to duplicate. We'll grab this one, and now we'll just do ZRemesher. I'll change my adaptive size down to like say 25, and target polygon count of 5 is probably fine. Keep groups. Now let's hit ZRemesh. Cool. Any questions? And again, if I miss any questions, I apologize. I'm just kind of keeping a little eyeball glance out to the side here. Let me close some of these extraneous windows here. Alrighty. Let this do its thing. Cool. Have you got a portfolio? Yeah, we were just there. On my ArtStation page, if you want to go through the boot tutorial, you can go to my ArtStation page here, and you can check out the boot tutorial. And this is pretty much, it's not everything. A lot of things that I work on are usually under NDA for months or years or forever. So mostly it's just personal work. Okay, so now we've got this thing. Let's go ahead and turn on line. Seems like I had a slightly hard time ZRemeshing through here. So one thing that would help with that is if I isolate this one, I need to kind of clean up these edges a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to masking, mask border, and I'm going to grow that mask a bit and then invert that. And now I'm going to go to deformation. Oops. Let's do I guess we can just do a polish by features. Open circle. That'll really just polish the heck out of that edge there. So that'll give me a nice straight edge that ZRemesher can kind of stick to here, like so. And again, we're just working on our duplicate, so I think that'll alleviate that, as well as that was a little bit high for our poly count here. So I'm going to go to geometry. I'm going to go to ZRemesh. I'm going to drop my adaptive size down to like maybe 10, and we'll change our target polygon count to like 2. And we'll see how that does. Now it is having to keep track of a lot of surface changes here, so the lower you set your adaptive size, the more it's not going to pay attention to surface changes, but it's also going to give you a more accurate poly count and keep your polygons the exact same size, or as close to the same size as it can. The higher you make your adaptive size, the more it takes into account surface changes. So that's useful for stuff like jeans and stuff that's really wrinkly. You probably want to keep your adaptive size up a little bit. For hard edge stuff, you may not. So, but basically that did was just give us some new geometry here. So if we go out of solo mode, we can do, so we've got these two showing. We've got our original showing here, and now we've got our new one showing here. I can do a subtool, project all. We don't need polypaint data, so I'm going to hit no. We can go and turn polypaint off. So we can do project all, and now we can do subdivide, and now we can do project all, and then subdivide, and project all. Now if we go into solo mode here, you're going to see we have our new soul here, and then here's our original soul. So this one only has 51,000. In fact, we don't even need to divide it that high. We could just do, you know, we can drop it down to 12,000. And if we hit D, that'll give us our dynamic preview here. There we go. So it'll give us our dynamic smooth preview. So you can kind of just go through there and kind of do that. But we'll go ahead and do one more. Project all. And now we can hit D. I have caps lock on. Why is D? Oh, I'm hitting S, that's why. Oh, maybe not. Let's see. D isn't toggling dynamic on. I might need to do a restart. But that'll give us a dynamic preview. It's only 51,000, but if I turn on solo and I kind of flip between here, here's our original, here's our new one. It's just a lot lighter, a lot easier to work with. We don't need this original Dynamesh anymore, so we can just hit delete, and now we have our rubberized sole here. And since we have keep groups on, we can also frame this with like a little rubber bead here. So if we go ahead and turn everything back on, and then we'll just bring our concept back. Let's turn poly group off there. There we go. So now we have this. We have our tread on there. We don't really need this anymore with our concept, so we can actually just clip or trim. Let's do trim curve, and we'll see if we can't pull this off here. Just trim through here. And then this one we can Dynamesh this, and then we can go in here with our trim dynamic, and we just knock this back. So again, we can just continue to refine our concept underneath since we've rebuilt our rubber sole here. Now here's our concept, and then we can just kind of modify this thing to make sure it matches up. So when we go and kind of divide this thing up into the different leather areas here, we can. Now, again, like I said, if we wanted that rubber beading around the side, we can Alt-tap this rubber sole here. Let's go ahead and duplicate this one off. And let's drop down to subdivision level 1 here. And we will, subdivision level 1, we'll delete higher. And we'll hit Shift-D. And that'll just get rid of that dynamic preview. So now we can put a ring right around here. I'm going to isolate this one. And again, we'll just go back to our stroke menu here. And we'll frame our mesh border. And I'm going to go to B, C, brush curve. And we'll do curve tube. Make your brush size the size you want this rubber bead to be. I think size 1 will be fine. That'll put a curve right around there. We can just tap in the middle here, or you can go to curve functions, yeah, and delete. So we got that thing. If we want to split that into its own subtool, just go to your split menu. You can do split mass points here, for example. And then our duplicate, we don't really need anymore. So if this is the one we use to kind of duplicate off, we don't need that. We can delete that. So now we've got a rubber bead, we've got this, and we've got our boot concept like so. So far, so good. And now we can start putting leather on these things and start adding this stuff. Let me pull up. I'm going to grab Quadro here more. Let me run this real quick. That'll be my reference, and we can pull up some quick boot reference and see if there's anything I want to pull from that. Cool, yeah, so animation, you can animate in ZBrush. You can use layers to animate, and you can use, as well as, if you go up here to movie, you can go to modifier. I'm trying to remember. I don't animate in ZBrush. I do movie animations as far as like turntables and stuff, but you can do a little bit of rudimentary animation in ZBrush, especially if you just want to test. You can use layers to kind of test mechanical features, like things, lids kind of flipping up or doors opening, that kind of thing. You can do in ZBrush with layers. But so we've got this thing here. So let's say we want to go ahead and start dividing this thing up. So I've got some reference over here. They're basically just like boots, like this and like this, kind of sci-fi-ish, sleek looking things. I'm trying to see if there's anything that kind of catches my eye as far as anything I might want to add, or any interesting things. And this one's kind of interesting. You can kind of see like there's a bead around here, and just kind of this kind of sliced up stuff is kind of cool. So, but the thing about this one is, if we kind of, hold on just a second here. There we go. If we kind of, it's almost like a boot shape, and then there's just shapes on top of it, which is actually pretty easy to do. But if we want to cut this thing first into two, separate parts here, we can kind of do that. So what I'm going to do is go into polyframe here, and when we did our trim, it actually trimmed this bottom piece off, which is nice. So what I can do is isolate this one, and now when we go to ZRemesh this thing, it'll ZRemesh a nice edge here. So we'll go ahead and just delete that. Although it did kind of pull in on the sides here. So let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit. I'm going to use H polish, and we're just going to make a really sharp dividing line between those two surfaces here, like so. And now what we can do is I can go into my brush menu, and let's do mask convex. What that's going to do is kind of keep our mask within. It'll look at our edges and keep our mask kind of constrained in here. And all that's doing is, if you hold down Control and you go here to your depth mask here, so mask convex, I basically turned depth mask on and moved this up. I got this from Joseph Drust's one of his Pixologic videos. If you change this depth mask to go up, and then of course if you do concave, it's the opposite. And hold down mask concave, you'll pull this top one down, not all the way to 0, but just to a very small number. And that way it'll kind of look at that edge and kind of keep it constrained right in there. So now we can kind of go through and, again, mask convex. And just kind of go through here and mask this out. Control-Alt-Tap to harden that up, sharpen that mask up, hit Control-W, and that'll make that all one polygroup here. And you can redynamesh if you want to, but I'm going to run a macro on this one, which is basically going to do that polished polygroup border that we did earlier, and that'll give ZRemesher a little bit easier time when we go to ZRemesh this. This bottom part I don't need anymore, so I can just Control-Shift-click this top one, delete hidden. And now we can start slicing this mesh up to get what we want. Also, if we're going to be ZRemeshing and adding depth to this, we probably don't need this interior face either. So let me clean this up real quick. I'm going to go to Control-Shift-Clip and kind of clip this around here. Now, if I am going to be dynameshing this thing, it's going to just keep recapping this bottom piece, which isn't a huge deal because dynamesh needs closed holes. But let's go ahead and give ourselves a specific surface here with our H-polish brush here. And you can just hold down Alt and let go of Alt and just kind of dial in where you want that to go. And then again, we'll go max convex and we'll just pop this off. Now you can use clip or trim, and that'll also give you a polygroup with slicing. Clip, you have to do a little bit of extra work. So a clip here, you hit clip and then hold down spacebar. You can turn on polygroup. So now every time you clip, it'll add a polygroup back here, as well as, of course, trim. If you do trim curve, that does a slice operation, close holes, and then you can get a polygroup here. So if I was to trim this shape out, it would do the effect the same, this kind of the same thing here. Or you can just go through here like I'm doing and just kind of control mask convex. Clean that up a little bit, Control-Alt-Tap, Control-W, and now I've got this polygroup, so I need this one here, delete hidden, we'll rerun that polish polygroup border, there we go. And now we can kind of go through here. Let's go ahead and slice, if we can, this heel up. We might not be able to get exactly where I want this, but we'll see how it does. Ah, that's pretty good. And then for this front part here, let's turn on double. So I kind of want to slice through this piece here. So I'm Control-Shift, and then you tap once, or you can do tap Alt twice for a little bit of a harsher transition. You just kind of slice through like this. And at this point, you can extract, you can ZRemesh with groups on and get better geometry, and then start making your leather pieces for your feet. Let's see. Yeah, and also, on that boot tutorial, we did stuff like shoelaces. I probably won't have shoelaces on here specifically, but we can do some straps. We can do those little pieces that kind of stick onto the mesh. We can do that ribbed down the middle with the frame. We can do all that kind of stuff. Is it necessary as a sculptor to know how to retopologize a model, or is that a job for everybody else? If you want to be more marketable, if you're just doing high-res stuff, I guess that could fall into concept art, if you're not worried about for the production side of things. Of course, you can do both. It's not rocket science. Nothing about it's sometimes tedious, but making game res is making maps, organizing your files, and getting it in engine stuff. It's not difficult to do. It's just be tedious. So, if you want to be more marketable, it's something you might want to know, but yeah, you don't have to know anything. Will you edit the VOD on your YouTube, Michael? Just asking in case I'd go later. I won't be editing it, but usually Pixelogic, well, not usually, always Pixelogic will have these videos I'm doing on their channel will show up right here on their YouTube channel. So it'll be episode 18, it looks like, when this one goes up. Hey, Tony, thanks for showing up. Cool. It's okay to be both modeler and character artist because I really love both. Yeah, sure. And, if you can model character art stuff, you can model anything else, I think. So, you can do prop modeling. I do weapons, vehicles, characters, more of the sandbox side of things. I do a little bit of environment work too when it's needed. But that's certainly not what I'm best at, but it is interesting. There's nothing wrong with environment art. A lot of really cool stuff that goes on that side. I just tend to be more prop oriented. If you want to extract a simple plan out of the shoe now, how would you do that? So That's what we're going to be doing now. So at this point, what we could do is immediately go into geometry. One thing you can do at this point, I'm probably not going to do this, but an option you can try. I want to get some nicer geometry here, so that's why I probably ZBrush first, but you don't have to. You can go straight into edge loop here, and you can hit panel loops, and that'll go ahead and like split these things out into different loops here. And of course, you're going to want to change like maybe your thickness and your polish size. You can let's keep that up. Change your bevel profile or your bevels to get a little bit more of the look you're going for. And now if you do Control Shift, because we have double turned on, if we do Control Shift and tap one of these polygroups, Control Shift A, you're going to see we have this nice separated out mesh. Now the only downside is this mesh isn't that clean. Although you got to ask yourself, does it need to be that clean? It'll subdivide fine-ish. You might get some artifacts there, but it'll probably do an okay job, as you can see. And it's perfectly sculptable. You can go through here and start sculpting. Of course, let's go ahead and turn. That's why paint keeps turning on. I have my standard brush we were painting earlier. If you are going to be sculpting on through a very thin mesh, obviously you're going to want to turn on backface masking in your brush auto masking here. Yeah, turn on backface masking. So yeah, before we do that, let's go ahead and undo back. Another thing you can do is you can extract. So now that we've got these things here, if you go over here to extract, you can extract by, you can mask something and you can hit extract and that'll extract a piece off, or you can do it by visibility, so you can isolate this one and you can extract. Of course, you're going to want to change your thickness and your smoothness and all that stuff. What I'm going to be doing, let's give it a shot. Let's go down here to ZRemesher. I'm going to keep groups, change my smooth down. Adaptive size, let's turn that down to 0, and we'll just do half. And that hopefully will give us a little bit nicer geometry around here if we can keep hitting half. That'll kind of go through and rebuild. It looks like we need to maybe do a little bit of collapsing of edges over there, but this will be fine. And you don't have to do these together. I mean, you can split these things off, and that way it doesn't have to worry about matching edges up, because at the end of the day, I don't care if these edges are matched up. So one thing we can do is we can take this one and we can go to split, group split, and that'll, because these are all separate polygroups now, we've got this one, and this one. And at this point, we probably don't even need this original concept sculpt. Oh, you know what? We don't have this original concept sculpt because I just split it up. So that's good. If you did duplicate it off, you can just go ahead and delete it now. So now with these ones selected, I can go through individually and just do like a ZRemesh on this one and just keep hitting half and just dialing down, just enough resolution. I think that'll be fine. And we'll do the same thing for this one. And this just gives me a little bit more control and makes it a little bit easier to work with if I want to go back and edit. Again, either edit where the points are or do any Z-modeler stuff. It just gives me fewer, more concentric areas. And of course, you can always fix this stuff back up if you want to merge these things a little bit closer. But again, the edges don't need to match up perfectly because there's going to be overlap. This one's going to be tucked under this one, and this one's going to be out over this one. So not a huge deal. So once you've got these all built up, it's just a simple matter of hovering over a face, cube mesh, polygroup all, or you don't have to do cube mesh. You can do extrude polygroup all, or all polygons in this case. You can pull in as much thickness as you want. We get super thick or not as thick. And then, so now you're going to see we inverted those faces. So again, display properties, flip. And that wouldn't happen if we do this one and we go out, it'll be fine. The fact that we're going in is what's causing it to kind of flip those faces. But the reason I'm going in is because our outermost points is what we resurface basically. So we can flip that one, and then we can go through here, give this some thickness, and flip that one. And when we do that, what we're creating is an outside polygroup, an inside polygroup, and then an edge ring here. If I want to make this a separate polygroup, a couple different ways you can do that. You can probably just do a group by normals, and that'll go through, and that's under your polygroup menu here. And that'll look at your surface and just give you polygroups based on those angles. Since this angle is so harsh, it actually gives us a separate polygroup down here. So now we can just do under the crease menu, we can do crease PG, which will crease our polygroups, and now we can hit D, and that'll just go ahead and give us our dynamic preview. Now again, if you want to soften these edges a little bit because this is very creased, go in here to your dynamic preview here, and we'll subdivide it up to 3, but we're going to keep our crease level at like 2. So now that'll give us a preview. You know what, let's do crease level, oh, there we go, 2. So that kind of soften that transition on those edges a little bit. Same thing for these ones. We'll go ahead and let's go into solo mode here, and we'll just do another quick group by normals, and that'll actually keep. And you know, it may not do the perfect job. You can dial this in. You can do like max angle of like 35 maybe, and that, you know, keeps this creased up here. Or if you don't want them creased, you can manually go in here and just hover over an edge and then just crease any of the edges you want. So I can hit dynamic preview, and then we'll just hit crease polygroup, and that looks about right, I think. And then we can just again go in here, crease level of 2, smooth subdivision of 3, and then there we go. So we're getting kind of a nice leather look. Now, a lot of this look of the mesh is going to come into play when we start sculpting wrinkles and adding stitching and framing our mesh or framing our leather with, oh, what do they call it? I forget what they call it. This kind of beading around here. So, or, you know, you can do flat beading and stuff like that. So a lot of that detail will come into play here, but we're just kind of just really quickly doing just a form pass basically. So let's go ahead and again we'll go into solo mode here, and we'll do group by normals. Did a pretty excellent job. Now these ones aren't going to be creased up here. If I want to manually go in here, I can just, you know what, let's crease this edge here, and that one will be creased, because if we go to crease polygroup now, since those are two separate polygroups, it'll crease between them. So again, you can manually just go through and crease edges wherever you'd like. Now you can hit D for our dynamic preview, and again, crease level of 2, smooth subdivision of 3, and that'll give us a nice little look. Now if you want to move these things separately, since it's a separate polygroup here, you can go through here and just kind of move this stuff around. Now if this one is going to be out a little bit more, you can go in here with like Q mesh polygroup all, and now you can just hold down shift and kind of pull along that surface normal, or you can go in here with your move brush and kind of move this out. I'm going to make it a little bit thicker here. And you can also go through here, since this is its own polygroup, you can take this one, let's go into transparency with ghost turned on, and now you can hold down shift and again just pull that up along that surface normal and just kind of pull it up and out. So you kind of just dial in how much thicker or overlapping you want those two pieces to be. If you have a Dynamesh and want to have it completely flat extract, you know what I mean. Yes. So if you, you know, if you did have a Dynamesh, you could mask and extract, and that'll just extract off of your surface, which is, I think, what I may have ended up doing. Let's go ahead and turn off poly paint. Yeah, with poly paint, with colorize turned on, if I hold down shift and turn on all these brushes, it's kind of hard to tell which one you have selected. I just hold down shift and turn off all the brushes, and now you can kind of see which ones are selected there. So now that we have that, let me go look at our, how are we doing on time? Oh, I got about 15 minutes left. Really quickly, again, we're looking at kind of this type of image, so you can kind of go through here if you want. And since these don't have any subdivision history on them, it's all just kind of preview subdivision history, you can go in with BTO. And now at this point, if you wanted to put in any fancy stuff on this, it'd just be a matter of, you can go in with, like we've done on the sole here, you can go in with Z-sphere retopology. You can go in here with this type of topology here, so you can kind of go through here and kind of make whatever shapes you want, like so, and you can just pop these things off and go split mask points, and now you've got this type of thing. And now you can do Shift D. You can do a little bit of Z modeler stuff on this thing, so we can go to like maybe, if we want to ring this, you can ring this thing with a curve brush, but you can also, one thing I might be inclined to do is go ahead and I'm going to duplicate this thing off, and I'm going to grab the select lasso, just that outer ring here. And we're going to go ahead and delete hidden. And now what I can do is I can just do, I don't want to do inset, I want to do Q mesh polygroup all. We can just pull out a ring like this. If we want to make this a little bit thicker, you can also pull out this way, or you can add an extra edge loop. And now we can kind of frame this mesh like so, and kind of give it a little bit of stuff in there. We can also isolate this one. Let's go ahead and do delete hidden. And now if we want to, We can make these like polygroup, polyloop, and just tap Alt as you go through, and that'll just give you different polygroups here. So now we can go into our geometry. Then I'm looking for edge loop. We can do panel loops on this one. Let's turn our smooth, our polish all the way down to 0. There we go. So now when we hit D dynamic, oh, you know what? Let's turn off double. Turn on panel loops. And we'll also do crease polygroup there. There we go. And let's go ahead and hit W, and we'll kind of push that back in there. Now you got going to move brush here, and now you got like different kind of padding in here. You can go in here and maybe smooth this look down if you want to, or add subdivisions, all that kind of stuff. So that was just a test, just to kind of show you guys, but that doesn't really add anything. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete these things. And then we'll worry about, maybe we'll do, before we go, I'll put in maybe a cuff over this top, and then we'll dig out this middle piece here, and then we'll frame that with a multiple edge loop, and we'll kind of panel that up. Yeah, ZModeler brush, and a couple more tricks. There's not an automatic operation to get a completely flat surface out of a Dynamesh object. Yeah, I mean, you can clip. There's a couple different ways to kind of do that stuff. You can clip, you can extract, you can age polish, you can resurface. A couple different ways. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to Q mesh polygroup all. I'm going to hold down Shift, and then again I'm going to go into solo mode here. If we want to, I'm going to hit Shift D. This is all creased the way I want, so I can go in here. Well, we know we have an outside group. Let's go ahead and just do select rectangle. We have an outside group and we have an inside group, so now I can hit Control W to make that all one polygroup. Creasing stays the same, and now I can just do Q mesh polygroup all, and again hold down Shift to kind of pull along that surface normal to get those to overlap, and now we have those overlapping. So let's go ahead and put in our middle section here that we want. So just looking at this mesh, it looks like it's got a middle section that goes down through here. So let's go ahead and mark those polygons. I'm going to hit Shift D, and I'm going to go through here, and I'm just going to mark the polygons I want to get rid of, like so. And now that I have those marked, I can just simply, now if I want to use some of this mesh, I can go in here and like Q mesh polygroup all, and if I hold down Control, that'll pop a duplicate of those faces off. I can also just duplicate the entire mesh here, and this way, if I'm in solo mode, I can just pull back through, and that'll get rid of them. So there's our new mesh here. And now that I've got this mesh that I duplicated off, I can just isolate this one, delete hidden, and now I can just do a Q mesh polygroup all and pull this back. And then we want to flip, and then we want to, if we hit D here, that'll kind of give us our interior surface, and you know, we can crease polygroup and all that good stuff as well. So now that we have this separate piece, what we can do is I want to make this look like it's kind of embedded, so I'm just going to pull that right back in there. And also, I want to kind of divide this thing up. So I'm going to just take this top polygroup here, and again, we're going to delete hidden, Shift D, and now I can make every single other one of these polygroups, other one of these edge rings, a different polygroup, and then we can do just like we did before with our whole panel loops and all that good stuff. I'm going to even this out a little bit, so I'm going to just go in here with my move brush, and I'm going to make this, just change this up a little bit. If I want to move both of these at the same time, I can temporarily merge them together. I'm going to Alt Tap, hold down Shift. I'm just going to merge these both together, and then I can move them together. Of course, when I did that, now they don't match up anymore, so that was kind of a waste, but we can always just split them out. Here, let's see, split hidden, there we go. Now we can tap this one here, and now we can just kind of move these things independently. So I should have merged them together first, and then moved them together, and then I wouldn't have to do this twice, but well. Do as I say. There we go. So now we've got that piece here, and again, that's kind of embedded. So let's go ahead and give this thing some bumpy surfaces down here. So one way to do that is you can go in here again, polygroup. I'm going to tap Alt as I go through, just to kind of split these things up into separate groups here. And now we can go in here to our panel loops. We have double turned on, so that's going to give a individual panel loop for each of those. If I turn double off, that's going to keep the back consistent. So I'm going to go ahead and turn our polish down to 0. Double off panel loops. Let's go ahead and delete hidden. There we go. So now when I hit D, that'll kind of give us that ridged look. Let's go ahead and increase polygroup as well. There we go. Something like that. Of course, if I want to make these a little bit more consistent, one thing I can do is, let's see, let's do double off. I want to keep that back though. Let me see. Regroup loops, bevel. We can do inner panel loops. That's a cool one. So panel loops off. There we go. So now, I guess we'll do double on, and now we can do here and then increase polygroup. And now I can go through, and it might be a little bit easier to grab all of these top faces. Sometimes what you can do is you can go ahead here and hit Control Shift and grab this panel loop, and then we're going to grow. Since we did 4 loops, if I do Control Shift X 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and then invert that. Oops, one more. Invert that. Now we have all of our top faces. If I want to make these all the same polygroup, I can hit Control W, and now I can just go through here and do Q Mesh polygroup all. And now we can kind of just go through here and we can Q-mesh these things out. We can hold down Shift to make them thicker or thinner. Let's give you a little bit more leeway. And now we can kind of begin push these things back like so. And that'll give us that kind of look. Now, we did want to frame this with a curve. As you can see in here, you know, it's got kind of that beading around the outside. We can use, trying to think, can use this inside curve on this other mesh to kind of do that if we want. We're going to just draw it in manually. So far so good. Yeah, Q-mesh is in your ZModeler brush. So if we go in here and do Shift D, Q-mesh is a cool one. So here's our Q-mesh brush. With this one, you can pull, let's do just Q-mesh a single poly here. So you can kind of pull this, I'm having a hard time clicking there. You can pull out a single poly here, and the more you do this, the more it'll go through. But the other cool thing about Q-mesh is you can just pull through, and it'll also snap. So if we go in here and do like an insert single edge loop, and now we do Q-mesh, it'll snap to kind of push back through there. You can also just do extrude, but you can also do, if you like, say we Q-mesh a single poly here and then a single poly here, and now we can do like, let's delete a single poly, and then you can like bridge 2 holes, and there's a couple different options for that. But you can kind of just dial in, you know, how you want to use your ZModeler to get the kind of shapes that you want. A lot of cool stuff you can do. If we wanted to, let's see if we can do, if we go here, what am I looking for here? We can split a poly. Yeah, so if we wanted to poke a hole like through these, we can go through and we can kind of split these polys, and then you can go and you can do, let's do a split point. So you can kind of go through and split point here. And on the back too, if you want to, you can go ahead and split polys and then go through and split point. Now, because you've already done one split point, if you just tap again, you'll do the same split point. And now I can do Q-mesh polygroup all. You can just pull these back, and if they line up, it should just pull straight back through. It's looking like, because these are all different directions. Let's see if we do polygroup island, if we can push that straight back without any problems, or push this straight out. Looks like they're not matched up perfectly, so that's kind of a pain. But yeah, you can usually just pull straight back through your surface here. So we hit D, that'll go ahead and dynamic preview. You can also just do like Q-mesh polygroup island or polygroup all, and you can pull these things back. And if you want to put like a button in there, what you can do is now you can kind of pull this out, hold down Control, and now you can kind of, and it's doing it on both sides here because we have polygroups on both sides, but now those are all separate pieces here. So let's go ahead and grab visibility on these ones, and we'll just go ahead and do an auto groups. And oh, you know what? That's not going to work because Let's go ahead and do auto groups here. So we'll hit Control W to make these all one polygroup. And now when we pull these out, those buttons will stay the same. So now when we hit dynamic preview, these things will fit right in there, and you can just move them back if we do polygroups up to 100 here. And then we do auto groups on these ones. And again, you're just using polygroups and targets in your Z modeler to kind of dictate what you want to move around and how. So you can now you can just hit mask my polygroups up to 100, so you kind of just put those right back in there if you want. In this case here, we probably just want to keep those plain. And then now for that beading on the side, we can go up and around. It might be a little bit easier if I trying to get something I can frame here. I already have this mesh here, which I can frame, but it is going to go all the way around the outside. You know what? We can edit that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, just to keep it safe, I'm going to duplicate this one off. I'm going to hit Shift-D. If we hold down Control-Shift, we can frame this entire border if we'd like. You know what? Let's go ahead and delete hidden. And now we can go over here to our stroke menu here. And we'll go ahead and do curve functions. We'll frame our border here. And then again, we'll just go back to our trusty brush curve, BC curve tube. And again, we'll make it really small, say 1. We can always inflate this later. Is it going to give us a curve tube here? Interesting. There we go. So we can go and frame this. Again, we can inflate this later. Again, it's giving us too much of a curve, but like I said, we can edit that. So I'm going to go ahead and do a split mask points here. If this is too many points, all we got to do is go into our ZRemesher. We'll do ZRemesher half, adaptive size down to 0. And that'll just kind of give us some new geometry. You can just keep hitting that to kind of simplify this. And now what we can do is we can kind of terminate wherever we want it to, really. So I'm going to go in here to Control-Shift, and we'll get rid of that loop, and we'll get rid of that loop. And now if I do an auto groups, we now have this as its own separate group. We can go ahead and delete hidden, go into solo mode, and then with our Z modeler brush, we can go over this edge, and then we'll close convex hole. We'll just kind of, oops, close that off. You're going to see the mesh gets a little bit warbly when I do operations, and that's because this mesh is so small. See, I kind of ran some noise through here. It's not a huge deal. When you go to smooth it out, it'll be fine. If you want to avoid that, let's see, you can scale it up. So one easy way to do that, and also keep if you just unify it or do a scale, an arbitrary scale, it's going to be hard to get it back in that position. So one way around that is you can go over here to your, and again, because we're working on such small scale here, we're going to go to deformation, and we're going to go size up, and we'll do one more. We'll go up twice. And now at this one, when I go through here, I should be able to, close convex hole, cap that. It doesn't do that warbly stuff. We can isolate these two, hit Control W, make it all one polygroup. And now we know if we do size 1, 2, it'll stick it right back into place there, and we're good to go. So now we can hit D, give us our dynamic preview there. Do Shift D to do that, and then we can kind of just finagle these ones into place here. Also, we probably have mask my polygroup still on. Yeah, so we'll turn that back off. And now you can just kind of move these things into place. If you did want to make these thicker, you can just go into your inflate, and you can either inflate or deflate along the surface normal here. Let's go inflate that as the tad there. There we go. And then we can go back to our, this mesh we don't need anymore. This is what we use to frame. So we can go ahead and just delete that. And now we've got that kind of look. And again, it's just a matter of going in, you can extract, or you can use your topology brush to kind of get those, any details you want back here. BTO, we can put like a strap on the back here. Like so, we can tap off of here. We can go ahead and split mask points, hit Shift D, and let's go ahead and do insert a single edge loop right down the middle. And now we can kind of pull this out and around our mesh. So if we did have a tab in the back, I don't see any on these boots. This one would probably be pretty thin. So I'm going to do QMesh, polygroup, island, and then we can just kind of shift push along here. And this thing will probably go, let's use our move brush here. Let's move that underneath. And if we want to loop this top part over, you know, if it like went up and like looped around, we can just tag. If we wanted to, let's go to, let's do insert, let's do slide edge loop complete. We'll slide this one down, and now we'll do an insert single edge loop here. So if we wanted to kind of fold over like this, what we can do is we can alt tag these polygons. We're going to go to QMesh polygroup island, hold down Control to push it into its own separate mesh here. Probably don't want to go out that far. And when you pull out, you can actually, you know, hit tab to keep cycling through. There it should. Let's see. Control, I guess not a big deal. We can isolate that, hit Control W, make it a new polygroup here. And now we can pull this one out. Now to get this to loop over, this is still going to be, this one's still a little bit thick. So I'm going to make that a little bit thinner here. What we can also do is, again, with our topological brush, if we hit W, turn on topological, make our brush size 1, we can just move this whole piece back real quick. And now we can just bridge these two. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to go to delete a single poly, and we'll just go ahead and delete these tops here. And I'm going to turn on double, which is for you guys under display properties way down here. Turn on double so you can kind of see both sides. And now we can just bridge these two. So we're going to go to bridge two holes. We're going to go here to here. We can kind of just bridge those. Seems to be having a little bit of trouble here. Let me see if I can play with some of these. Let's do optimal resolution and curvature, and maybe circle. Yeah, it's getting a little bit wonky. I mean, we can clean this up a little bit. We can also make it maybe a little bit easier on the mesh here, just by going through here and kind of, you can pull down one edge here and maybe pull up. Let's turn off topological here. So we pull up these edges. And if you want to scale up your whole entire model, what you can do is you can do a merge visible, and then you can scale it all up, and then you can split them back out into their pieces. Let's see if this will help any. So now we can go to bridge, two holes, spline, interactive. Yeah, it keeps wanting to twist. I mean, we can just do a really simple one, and now we can just do a mask edge loop complete, invert that mask, and then we can just transpose this thing and just manually go through and kind of finagle this thing. Now, if you want to add more resolution at this point, you can just do a quick like bevel. So we can bevel, edge loop complete here, and kind of add a little bit more resolution. So now we have a thing that kind of flips over like so. I'm going to do a quick uncrease all, and then I'm going to do a Control Shift. I'm going to grab this outer ring here. This is just going to be a polygroup cleanup, so I'm going to invert that. Control W to make this all in polygroup. And then we're going to go to auto groups here. This is all under your polygroup menu. That way we have nice interior exterior spaces here. So now I should be able to do like a crease polygroup, hit D, and that'll kind of give us that look. If we want to tighten up these edges, we can manually go in here and insert a single edge loop to kind of tighten those corners up. Or you can go through here and you can like crease your edge loop, your edge here, and your edge here, and your edge here, and your edge here. Hit D. There we go. And now we've got kind of a little leather loop here. And with dynamic preview turned on, you're going to get a pretty good idea of where these things need to be pulled to ground. Also, we can go ahead and do, I'm going to do an extrude polygroup all and hold down Shift, and that'll kind of thicken that up. There we go. And then we can, you know, we can always put a button back there to keep that down. And always, you know, go back in here with your move brush and refine as needed, or you can just use your transpose and kind of make this as skinny or as thick as you want to. All that good stuff. And most of the good stuff is going to come in when we actually, maybe next episode, we'll apply this, and then we can go through here and start adding, you know, our wrinkles. Let's go to Smooth Stronger here. You know, let's turn up our lazy race a little bit. We can kind of go through here and start adding in, you know, where the compression wrinkles are going to go. It's really going to help sell the whole look of this boot. But, you know, right now, we're just kind of getting stuff blocked in. So, not a huge deal. No rush. We're still in good shape. And oh, looks like we're at 8 o'clock. So the last minute stuff. Cool, cool, cool. And I'll also, yeah, before I leave, make sure you do check out the streaming event. It's going to be at noon Pacific time today. There's a link to the ZBrush Central stuff. I'll be on my channel on Thursday morning, same time as today, 4 a.m. PST to 6 a.m. And then, of course, next week, Tuesdays, I'll be on Pixelogic channel for as long as they'll have me. Cool, everybody good? Awesome. Well, I'm going to head out. Well, head downstairs, I should say. And cool, yeah, and it'll be available for replay if you go to the Pixelogic YouTube channel. Here's the previous episodes for this channel here. And if you go to my playlist here on my YouTube channel, there's a ton of stuff for you guys to kind of go check out and see. There should be a lot of cool stuff for you guys to kind of go look at. Cool. Everybody good? All right, I'm going to go ahead and sign out. Thanks for showing up, everybody. And I'll see you next week.